Gracias, Lord. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, with all this beautiful poetry and imagery happening, I want to tell you very soon, we've only got a few people left, so please be patient and keep giving us your love. Now, I mentioned earlier, I think, San Francisco State, several people mentioned San Francisco State. We were out there getting arrested and finally coming through and getting our first ethnic study program in the country, which I'm going to say that we still have it today. Now, investing with the SB 1070 Young Arizona, they're doing away with ethnic studies, all over other places. We will not let them take it here from State College for that. And one of the people that were involved there with us, like Danny Glover, también Danny from Potrero Hill, and Reginald Majors, Professor Reginald. And he had a wonderful daughter who became our poet laureate just a couple of years ago. Devorah Majors, please.
Like Janice, I typed it really big. There's no light in it. Okay, Roberta asked me to, it should be up asked me to talk about the blacks, because, you know, everybody always talks about segregation. Well, there's another word, it's called aggregation. And so it's like we work together across cultural bounds, and then we aggregated in our own groups with each other and did our thing too. You know, so it's like not to be scared when there's a bunch of black people or a bunch of Latin people or a bunch of it's cool. Anyway, so because I'm just such a goody too, she's actually wrote this up about this, okay?
All right.
In 1970s, I was the teenage kid's sister, a role I knew well, having been well trained by my older brother. You know, the quiet one on the edge. I was, at the time, pathologically shy and always present, if not noticed or heard. I wrote and watched the black writing community grow and filled with people I was with in college, albeit a few years behind. Now, community is a loose idea. After all, folks didn't write together, and there were not as many opportunities to write and read one's work as there are now, at least not for people of color. Blackfire, a major anthology from the then nascent black arts movement, had come out and included a spattering of West Coast voices: Ed Bullens, Marvin X, then Marvin Jackman, Reginald Lockett, Joe Gonsalves, then the proprietor of a New Day bookstore, an African diaspora bookstore on Divisadero Street. No, there were no women from the West Coast in it. Its existence made West Coast writers and editors imagine their own publications. Joe Gonsalves, then who renamed himself Dingani, started the Journal of Black Poetry in the late 60s and renamed it in 74 Kitubu Chujua. That journal smoothed the land for other magazines such as Oakland's Foresight, a holistic view of African American struggle, and Berkeley's Soul Book. My own father, betwixt and between writing his own nonfiction books, got together with a graphic designer, Milt Tuitt, and a printer, Jamie Jameson, and they produced a magazine called Praise Singer. Marcus Books was the underpinning of our writers' community. It sold the magazines and self-published books, and the Richardsons offered guidance, encouragement, and often warning words about truth and craft and reason. The Bay Area was loaded with black writers. David Henderson, living in New York, Berkeley bi-coastal. Burley Clay, who had not yet been mowed down on SF Western Edition Street. Q.R. Hand arrived in SF in the 70s, and Sonia Sanchez was in San Francisco, living on Clayton Street, a few blocks from my parents' home. I still remember her poetry book on the dining room table, Baby and Gun slung on an African woman's back. I took it up to my room and savored each line, each lowercase word running up and down and across the pages, and making a kind of musical sense I had to search for in E.E. Cummings, so much more relevant to me, powerful and full of love. With me no younger and you no younger, no older than you be. It's a love poem. Ntozake Shange was in San Francisco then, developing poems that were to become for colored girls who considered suicide when the rainbow was enough. Me, I just wrote and let other people call me poet while I still clung to my life as a dancer, decent and well-trained, but without that star sparkle, and an actress, always making a role in the play, a speaking role, but never the lead. But there were enough of us black writers to give critical mass that assured we would always have some backup and would keep on writing. What amazes me, looking back at Time to Breeze, a book that I sadly was not a part of, is how many of us stayed on the road. Ed Bullens, quote, when in the wilderness of my heart, the wildfires flare, until he died, crafted some of the finest plays around. And Abby Lincoln, who just died, last year? Publishing as Amanita Musaka, saying, there are bits and pieces of myself strewn about, an arm here, a leg there, a ragdoll chewed up. And David Henderson, and Tulani Davis, then Tulani Nakabinde, like dope, there's a package waiting for the crisis of today, so we won't have to see the theft of our tomorrows. And the recently deceased Reginald Lockett. It would have been out of sight and pure delight to just know that Marie Laveau was hiding somewhere inside my bedroom walls, came out at night when everybody slept, told me strange and wonderful things, and gave me a gris-gris back on my own. And John Chennault and Ntozake Shange. Muriel Kay's life was cut short, but I have no doubt without that fateful accident, he too would be writing still. This is from his introduction with Gumbo, part of Time to Breeze. We came together from a distant land, our lives, future already planned. We came a plentiful route betrayed, not by another man, but by our brothers in our homeland. We came here to this strange land. We brought with us an unbreakable chain, love, culture, unity, that has withstood the wrath of every man. This was our community, a community of words and culture shared. Didn't we stomp feet together at the Keystone Corner and the Both And? Didn't we share poetry at Oakland's Illusion? That was a bar in Oakland where all black writers went to. And later at East Oakland's Food for Thought, and before that in San Francisco's Mini Candy Club on Fillmore. We read each other, heard each other, learned from each other without formal workshops and conferences, invocations, or retreats. But the words shared until we all and each were inspired to go home and write from moonrise to sunrise to moonrise, stretching the phrases that would catch the moment and would live in their time, and beyond that, would live forever and shine in polished obsidian black. One poem. I have to say this. I a few years ago was listening to KPFA, and this guy was talking, and he was talking about going to some conference, a green conference, and about how he was seeing the world the way the world is going to be. And somebody came up to him and said, "Well, you're dreaming," and he said, "Of course I am. That's what you do. First you dream it, then you make it so." But you know, so so I started a series of poems doing that, and so this is from one of them. Okay. And I have to say, I'm not a deist. I don't care what your faith is. I don't do it. But I think there's some. But I saw this translation. I'm going to read you the translation and then the poem. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. That's a lot different. That's a lot different. Incidentally, this is in the Occupy San Francisco anthology. In Amharic, I once heard the correct translation was not the meek, broken, crushed, humiliated low who would inherit the earth, but the gentle, and we all, inheriting these streets, even as we sleep on them and are swept up only to return, sharp the edges of so many of our lives, fierce with hunger and pain, so much disillusionment, so few triumphs, even as the rulers squeeze tighter, cutting short our breath, hobbling our steps, Harnessed together, we will inherit the earth, such as it is. Sad with violence and pestilence, the air clotted and gray, islands covered with an ever-rising sea, turning, turning, still it is becoming ours. Even as they wage their gruesome wars, killing and selling, buying and exporting death, advertising the price for each kill, factored into the decision to research, develop, manufacture, and buy the newest weapons to kill more quickly, more anonymously. Even in the face of this hegemony of arms, every side buys from every side sells to every side. Even the pawns choose the weapons, aim and fire and die. Still, we gentle are joining together more and more tightly, inheriting the earth from these others who want only to have, to own, to hold, to control, as if they were hurricane and sun, arrogant in their perceived power, not understanding that all of it will explode or else disintegrate, and they will be left with misshapen, impotent visions of the times that used to be, while we remain, remembering our many losses along the way. Still wounded and reeling, we gentle will inherit the wound, the earth, and pull out our seed stock and begin to plant again.